On to play against Rad, and who will be making their way down to that lower bracket to fight for their tournament lives. We are starting on Krakoa. The Hellfire Gala is here, and it is a party with tickets available to that upper bracket finals. And we're looking at, well, it's Krakoa. It's only fitting that the mutants are taken out first, removing Emma Frost and Magneto.
Yeah, pretty much standard. PATAPIM actually taking out the Magneto first. Virtus.Pro have been now the sort of biggest Emma Frost merchants, to say the very least. So Loki's actually going to be protected first from PATAPIM, giving Ken something to sort of play around and making sure that that backline of strategist isn't hit too hard with the bans that are about to follow. But Virtus.Pro having a bit of freedom here. Usually teams might ban out the Loki, but because it has been protected, they're going to gun for the torch just to make sure that the likes of Tanuki or Pokey can't get their hands on it.
But there's still the Psylocks, there's still the Punishers, there's still so many of these Juris officers, and even the Black Panther, which we have seen BrBrPatipim bring out from time to time. You can see here for Virtus.Pro, Nevix currently hovering the Thor. I don't think that will make it out of base, but it would be fun to see. Captain America is being hovered on both sides, though. Both these teams can play extremely well. While Polly is the more popularized member, Virtus.Pro more than capable.
Yeah, Nevix has been picking it up a lot more, but I do think that the complete ban out of Caps is only going to nerf Polly's potential, because him and Pokey combining, that cousin meta I suppose it would be, are really starting to stand tall. Virtus.Pro not only banning out the Human Torch, but protecting it themselves over from Phi. That's a scary non-mirrored pick to be having, I think, Tetcher.
Getting themselves the one-sided torch. That is going to give them a lot of extra potential. But you can see here, BrBrPatipim, they've been studying these games as well. They're looking at the Adam Warlock. There have been a couple teams who have been running the quote-unquote triple strategist setup, utilizing the Adam Warlock and the Mantis, but with running the Human Torch instead. Some teams have chosen to deal with this by banning the Mantis to prevent the damage boost, but it seems BrBrPatipim would prefer to remove the Adam Warlock to prevent the revives.
Punisher going to be the last protection coming in, knowing that you're going up against the torch, having something to shoot it down is going to be pretty prevalent. But because there hasn't been that protect coming in for the main two vanguards, both Emma Frost and Magneto is going to be taken out for BrBrPatipim. So that front line is going to be a little bit more strenuous, but Enzo locking in the hold makes me think that we're going to see Tanuki Namor, because that team up has been such a strong aspect. You could go Venom as well, because Enzo, it might just sort of rely on comfort here for the most part. It seems to be more of like the standard stuff that we're expecting, and I'm not going to put too much stock in fire locking in the Spider-Man. It would be interesting to see it pulled out now, though.
They have played it in tournaments in the past, but it's extremely rare. So I, like you, not entirely sure we'll see that make it out of the base. But both these teams are hovering the Hulk without Namor currently. This could obviously change as the map goes on, but with the Magnetos taken out on one side, Emma taken out the other, then having that indestructible guard can give you a very solid amount of burst protection for your backliners. So being able to protect them is pretty huge, especially with the kind of one-sided pickups. Lunar Snow available for the side of BrBrPatipim. Dridro currently hovering us in on the Rocket to armor up their team.
So you would sort of expect that Loki Adam could be the backline of BrBrPatipim for this one. Nevix over on that Hulk to begin with. You do have the Emma Frost, so is it going to be Finzi that's playing on it? Yeah. Sparker over on the Psylocke. You do have that team up available, so lethal damage can be done by Sparker with that combo if BrBrPatipim are not careful. Might be Enzo wanted to try and deal with it, but a portal placing of BrBrPatipim up on the high ground with a turret for Pokey.
Tanuki and Pokey going full gun here, bringing out the Star-Lord with the Element Blasters, and it's going to be Pokey getting first blood onto Sparker. Sparker is one of the most legendary Psylocke players in this game right now, but if there's anyone you get the chance to practice against, it's BrBrPatipim having the opportunity to, for starters, know how to play it, and for second, turn around and just guess where it's going to be and try and pick it off, because you've had all that time to warm up against it.
Sparker does have the Punisher available to him, and he was a very good, like a Bucky Punisher playing up in the Invitational. But you're right, he's mostly been over on that Psylocke. I mean, the combination is strong. You've got Finzi and Nevix both locking in the Emma Frost consistently. So, like I mentioned, team up very good, very strong. And his turret has been an absolute Hail Mary. I think Virtus.Pro have struggled to deal with it up in the sky. And Enzo trying to peel a little bit more. Fi going to back out in the sky. And Tanuki, in an attempt to try to shut down Fi that's up in the sky, the Idolor is going to keep him going. And Fi is going to force out the regeneration domain. Unfortunately, he goes down and Ken is forced to bring out the God of Mischief, copying over the fate of both worlds before Alex has it ready. So this is a good first fight. And BrBrPatipim are building up a nice amount of progression on the point here.
They're holding this very effectively, already up to 50%, and Virtus.Pro is starting to get whittled down. They keep trying to go for the flanks, but Enzo was able to chase down Fi earlier on, and now Nevic's going to be dropped down into Banner. Will they be able to stagger them? That's going to be the pickup by Tanuki, taking that 1v1 duel with Enzo, getting that final hit onto Fi as they came in for the reinforcement. This will mean that Virtus.Pro now have to wait and regroup later. Nevix, of course, was staggered, is finally able to run off the map so that they can rejoin their team with a 4-second delay.
Fate both worlds has just been grabbed up by Saipei. That's how long it's taken. Meanwhile, 5 other ultimates available for BrBrPatipim with 80% on the board. This looks weird to see the Virtus.Pro are sort of this behind now, but ultimates wise they have caught up. It's going to be a pretty big battle though with what's available. But Saipei goes down. Pokey catches him with a turret. You lose one of your biggest strategist ults.
Poke's set up here. Here comes the Galactic Legend for the initial setup. Monster Hulk. Nevix pulling the trigger because Finzi's already down and overtime's active. They need to keep bodies on this point. They finally get onto Tanuki, shutting down the Galactic Legend. Fate of both worlds from BrBrPatipim is giving them all that extra sustain. Sparker's trying to get onto anyone they can find. If they can get rid of the Hulk, it removes a lot of that extra crowd control from the point and will get rid of a big body for BrBrPatipim. But that overtime is ticking down bit by bit. Fi retreats to the low ground to make sure that they're topped up before they re-engage. Ionic seduction from Finzi to try and lock onto anyone in the back line. Great pickup from Sparker to take down Tanuki, and with dozens of butterflies, Sparker is likely going to secure this for Virtus.Pro as they will flip this and clean out the remaining members of BrBrPatipim, and Virtus.Pro now have to hold from 100 to 0.
Everything was used that was available, but Eternal Bond held up for Tritro. I think that was really good from Ken as well, actually, with just the low-key clones really just mixing out the damage done from Sparkers down to the butterflies. But the follow-up is there. Now it's a case of like a final judgment for Pokey. If you can get out that Eternal Bond first, Saipei's not going to be close to having a fate of both worlds. That could be enough to take this first point. We see BrBrPatipim being very good on his domination modes, but Virtus.Pro have been very good, even if they've lost the point first, able to take this from 0 to 99% and then win.
What a difference.
Tanuki on the flag, Sparker spotting the Hulk, leaping on past. Enzo trying to sneak in from behind, cause a distraction, but having to retreat into the rest of the team. BrBr making sure that no one is picked up. They're trying not to get staggered out, but they're going to try and commit to this. Here comes that final judgment to push on in. Immediately, the Eternal Bond comes on out to try and keep the team topped up. Fi in the sky has already backed away to make sure that they're not going to get sniped off, and the healing output is just too much. They just burned final judgment and found exactly nothing.
I'm ready to put on a show.
Breaker is available for Nevix, but Sparker is going to try and go in first. He's able to actually catch onto Finzi, but they lose Kent at the same time. And that's just as he is to God of Mischief, so BrBrPatipim may be stressing a little bit to try and keep themselves going. Fate of both worlds has to be dedicated, but it still allows Pokey to go down with just the pressure that Sparker's been able to put in on him. Tanuki now trying to find a good spot for the Galactic Legend, trying to go for the portals to dodge a lot of these bodies that are throwing himself in that direction. As Finzi, I think, is the one to bring out the portal play to try and fight on this objective. Still in control of Virtus.Pro, still about 95%, and now BrBrPatipim have to touch a point. I don't know if they're going to have much of a choice, especially when these supernovas thrown down at the same time. They have one player that's able to jump on, but are they going to be long for this world? Everybody's able to keep up for the time being. The Tanuki now trying to clear the space. This was 99 to 0, pulled all the way back for Virtus.Pro to make it close, and now the contest is there. BrBrPatipim want to try and take this back. Finzi with the Eye of Agamotto, not from Polly actually, he gets CC'd through it, so he's halfway to having it yet again. Finzi's about to have his own Eye of Agamotto in the hands, and the Eternal Bond is going to keep Virtus.Pro fighting on this objective.
Monster Hulk to try and delay Fincy with their own Eye of Agamotto, like you say, but BrBrPatipim, they might not even need to be hit by it as they are getting picked off one by one. Down goes Enzo, that Hulk dropping back into Banner as overtime is ticking down. Tanuki is on the flank. Pokey is dropped all the way out here, is not going to make it to the rest of this fight as they have no HP left. Loki teleports in to try and buy some time. There's the flying Venom from downtown from Polly to try and get those extra seconds they make their way in, but Fire in the Sky, they can't get that high and they will just be pulled off the point. It's a VP game 1, or at least round 1.
Yeah, round 1. I mean, it felt like it could be a full game, to be fair. Just BrBrPatipim, it's the exact thing that makes this Virtus.Pro team so strong, is they were really sloppy at the beginning. Like, is this the Virtus.Pro to be at the top of the EMEA for so long? Like, and they're playing like this? It was pretty awful by their standards. But once they were able to take that point, it was so well contested. There was so much control taken there. And BrBrPatipim just couldn't find enough to actually take the objective from that point onwards. Even when you're looking at the amount of damage that I think Pokey's been able to throw over on that Punisher, it's not been enough.
They're doing so much. Like you say, the Punisher is trying to drop everything. The Galactic Legend is trying to just melt on through, but they're up against an Eternal Bond, giving so much extra protection. And then, of course, you have Cypher, who's on the Lunar Stone with the Fate of Both Worlds. They have two of some of the best healing ultimates in the game, making it so hard for these, quite frankly, damage over time ultimates to actually get the pickups. This has been Virtus.Pro timing to perfection once they got that defensive position.
Virtus.Pro, because that fight went on quite a while. You have the Fate of Both Worlds if you want to contest this early, and Sparker Dance the Butterflies. But BrBrPatipim better be checking it, otherwise they're in for a rude awakening. That'd be why they're playing quite close together. In fact, they're giving a lot of respect up, actually. It's just going to be the Doctor Strange on the points. Apolly has a lot to deal with. Tanuki seeing if he can just get a couple more hits with the barrage to get that Galactic Legend online. The final judgment is going to be the thing that starts off, forcing out the Fate of Both Worlds. Dreedro is very close to having an Eternal Bond, but no doubt Tanuki is ready and waiting off the back of this, especially with the cloak being taken out. That might be the perfect chance for Tanuki to go in and do the damage to clear this up, but it's actually Spark with that Dance of the Butterflies. Nevix jumping in with a World Breaker Hulk too was enough to actually stop Tanuki from getting anything, Tetra.
The duel is being traded out. Sparker has so much sustain here with everyone just keeping them topped up. They are snowflaked repeatedly throughout these fights. They spot the flanking Tanuki. Tanuki, by the way, just tried to chase down Cypher and was not able to catch them in a 1v1 because of the mobility and because people came for the reinforcements in time. Here comes the Bond from Dreedro to set up early for this fight to go for the hyper commitment. The Punisher is up on top of one of these trees for a little bit of extra culling turret sustained as Fincy takes down Alex. I have Agamotto into the backline, but they're just not finding targets, Ryan.
Oh, the Supernova is just a bit too much to deal with, but this point is still contested. What's it been like? Almost 3 minutes, I think, of these two teams fighting on this point here. The Sparker was almost about to build up another Dance to the Butterflies, but it might be able to be pocketed and saved for this next engagement. BrBrPatipim, though, are the ones that are actually holding on to the point for the longest amount of time, but the bodies are starting to give up. That Terror Cape is fantastic. That actually just came through from Dreedro. That's something that's going to force BrBrPatipim back, and even though Polly's able to get the catch onto Sparker, the point finally goes in the direction of Virtus.Pro.
Like you said, we were fighting on that for so many minutes and it only just got picked up. These two teams are just trading back and forth. Fate of Both Worlds has to be used by Cypher because Nevix is taken down. The Vanguards getting staggered out here for Virtus.Pro. With the Fate of Both Worlds buying some extra time, Alex will finally get their own Fate of Both Worlds, which will give them time to match it. And Pokey, finally allowed to play Psylocke, is in the backline, finding Fincy for yet another tank stagger. They are punishing the Vanguards this game.
Virtus.Pro can just sort of hang back and go, okay, they use 3 ultimates. We've got 2 that are looming with the World Breaker and then also that Supernova for 5. Even Eternal Bond might not look too shabby too soon for Dreedro. Have a lot to sort of get through, though. you know, Tanuki, it's just a mind game of, okay, what are they going to have available strategist-wise? What can we force out? Can I go afterwards? Is he going to try and use it now? He's got the right read that he's able to get there before the strategists are available. But Dredro just gets the Eternal Bond online just in the nick of time to stop that damage from following through. Polly with the Eye of Agamotto connected onto Warmer Finzi, but it's Dredro that actually goes down off the back of that Eternal Bond. And BrBrPatipim doing well to keep this snowballing into 99%. We've seen Virtus.Pro be comfortable from this spot beforehand, and they have a lot of ultimates to go for this next engagement.
Tanuki not finding a lot with these Galactic Legends, but what they are finding is forcing positioning. They are trying to dual fight. This is the plan here, to just try and make sure that they do not get the positioning that they want. So if they can keep that pressure on, then they're successful. And once Fire is no longer causing damage, then they can just try and focus onto these strategists to force them out of position. Like you said, that forced out the Eternal Bond, which allowed Polly to land the Eye of Agamotto, getting the timing, passing the check, and able to burst through that Cloak and Dagger, which removes the Goop on the floor and prevents that extra healing and damage. As Sparker is in the backline, Psionic Seduction to prevent any follow-up and protection from the Dance of the Butterfly if they decide to pull the trigger. But for now, they're taking their time as they're already winning the fight. With Tanuki and Pokey down, they have forced BrBrPatipim off the point. It's essentially a team wipe, and BrBrPatipim will be sent back to spawn. They're going to delay Alex as long as possible to get the stagger.
Yeah, Nevix has been an absolute menace over on this Hulk. Just forces everybody to back up into the room off the point, forces the regeneration domain as well in a place that isn't actually on the objective itself. The Virtus.Pro is a very clean take for them. They're still behind on point percentage, but of course a point up here on Krakoa. It really is the best chance, I think, for BrBrPatipim as a reminder to go in and do damage in this best of 5. It's their best game mode. It's the one where Virtus.Pro have lost the most maps on. But they're not looking to be in a losing position thus far. Enzo might have something to say about it, but you've already lost Tanuki in this engagement. Fate of both worlds. It goes from being an unoptimal fight to be thrown in ultimates to the last opportunity potentially as Virtus.Pro about to even up the point percentage, and they're sat on ultimates. Fate of both worlds, followed by the Dance of the Butterflies to go into the backline. Ken just gets the copy to make sure that he has a Lunar ultimate of his own, and the Supernova from Phi. It's just whether he can catch somebody, even if they're being healed up this much, bursting them down. Polly, it's a complete miss actually from the Eye of Agamotto. Again, Virtus.Pro holding on to it, and this is pretty much on the board. I don't know how much of a contest it's going to be. Enzo's just got his toe on the edge of it as the Hulk. Switch back to the game, guys. We're about to miss some of the action here as Virtus.Pro still have enough bodies to fight for it, and there's no contest. BrBrPatipim losing out on potentially their best shot in this best of 5 against Virtus.Pro.
Utilizing some very effective use of that Human Torch to try and duel out and chase down the Star-Lord, who's meant to try and take these 1v1s. And once you had that, you had the stagger. With the Star-Lord being one of the best characters to reinforce quickly, they knew it was time to burn ultimates to try and take the fight. Even though it was early at the beginning of overtime, you want to try and just make sure that people are going down one by one. They lost Cypher because of it, because they burned that Fate of Both Worlds so quickly, but like you said, that forces out the Loki immediately into that Fate of Both Worlds with the God of Mischief by that point, and we are heading to Arakko.
Quite a surprise, really, because BrBrPatipim have picked up Jalia a couple of times, and it is a map that Virtus.Pro have consistently lost in the past. Not a huge amount, but out of the maps that we've seen them play thus far, Jalia seems the most susceptible outside of those domination game modes. But this is not a bad map at all for Virtus.Pro. They've been brought here 3 times by various teams, and they've won every single encounter. So maybe BrBrPatipim have spotted something about this. BrBrPatipim also dedicating towards having that Loki protect to begin with. Maybe this is going to be the Emma Frost picked up yet again for either Nevix or Finzi.
Virtus.Pro mentioned that they absolutely love this Emma, picking her up, believing she is one of the stronger picks, but this does allow BrBr to trade it out for the one-sided Loki, getting those regeneration domains that of course give full invulnerability while inside. Fairly easy to destroy with the right character, but it's about the initial burst protection against characters, quite frankly, like Psylocke, if they wanted to bring that back again. And while this looks familiar, we are going to say goodbye to Steve Rogers as both sides look to bat out Captain America.
Said it in the last map, Seems to be a big nerf to Polly, and whilst this Doctor Strange was pretty much always on the back foot, it was hard to really see how much of a good Vanguard he was. He hadn't had that ability to shine. Virtus.Pro seemed to have looking like a carbon copy draft that we saw from the last game, with the protection onto both EMEA and also Torch.
Now here is the question. With the Torch banned out early, will we see these similar reactions? Cloak and Dagger once again going to be banned away. This does still leave, of course, the Fate of Both Worlds, from Lunar Snow, as last time that was also not banned out, giving Virtus.Pro the Fate of Both Worlds and the Eternal Bonds. This time, BrBr are going to take away at least one of them. Now, what do they protect? Punisher looking to be hovered once again, as they are expecting Virtus.Pro won't hyper-prioritize a ban onto that Psylocke if they want to play it again, and if not, they have options.
So for Virtus.Pro, it's the exact same draft from them that they had on Krakoa. So we're going over towards the sister map, I suppose, of Arakko. Only one change for BrBrPatipim. Instead of banning out the Adam Warlock, they've gone for the Cloak as that final ban before they save the Punisher. Which means that Sparker does have the freedom to go for the Adam Warlock and play a little bit of that Guardian's triple Resurrect composition. And considering Virtus.Pro defended first, I'm surprised that they haven't leaned towards it. In fact, Nevix is like, my Hulk is goated, I am going for more, I'm having so much fun. And Sparker's like, I got you, bro, he's on the Namor.
We talk about defenses, like you say, that Namor is very good for flanking, but they are also good for static defense, due to the fact that you can't actually move your Monstros once they have been placed, so being able to hold a defensive point with them can be extremely effective. This is also why we see Namor played very flank heavy sometimes, because if your opponents run away when you try to push in and set up with those Monstros, then they don't get much use. But if you wrap around from the side, send out the Monstros and go for the quick burst, then suddenly those squids, the burst damage you can get from the right click from Namor can easily wipe a squishier target.
I'm excited for this. BrBrPatipim taking us to the most recent map added into the pool and hoping to take a win against Virtus.Pro, who are undefeated here thus far. In fact, undefeated over on the entire Hellfire Gala collection of the two maps. Again, to play the back-to-back is going to be nice for them. They're defending first, and more just chip damage. Finzi does get CC'd, I think, by Enzo with the sedation. Able to just back out a little bit more and protect themselves from taking too much damage and giving too much ult charge. And Tanuki's over on the Black Panther. We've been seeing this a lot more recently. Might be necessary to rely on here as an opening.
This means that Virtus.Pro did pick correctly. If they were looking at that Adam Warlock or a Psylocke, that Black Panther could have in theory run through them if they weren't careful. This Namor, much safer, going to be damaging that Black Panther every time they run past, and the potential to pick them off with the Monstros, but Namor is still squishy. Unless they're in their Aquatic Blessing form, they can still go down to Tanuki, who is able to get the best of their first matchup, as we are seeing BrBrPatipim actually pushing in quite far, but there's the counter, as Cypher going to be getting the pickup onto Tanuki with the Force Physics.
Enough people grouped up, and we see the regeneration domain used from Ken a little bit further back. So far, just having pretty much open ground to throw this fire prison down on. Nevix blocking a little bit more of the damage, able to reset and go out. And honestly, it's an absolute pleasure to be able to watch Enzo and Nevix just go at each other as Hulks, because these are two of the strongest, like, divey Vanguard players that we have available to us. Problem is, for BrBrPatipim, whilst you have some aggressive options still looming, all of the strategist ultimates are good to go.
Tanuki, like you say, looming Polly with that Eye of Agamotto Supernova coming out quite early in this fight from 5 to try and hold this zoning point. Immediately, Regeneration Domain comes out, but the Human Torch, one of the best characters to go into it, as those Fire Tornadoes do go up quite a bit, which means they'll take out that Regeneration Domain. Flaming Meteor into the backline, and they catch Tanuki again. Sparker's now looking for anyone out of position, as a Dance of the Butterflies could hold for even longer, but they can also hold this out for a long time. Make sure that they have it staggered for BrBr's next purchase. Tanuki has moved off of the Black Panther and has decided that Wolverine is going to be the next pickup to try and just melt through this Hulk and through the Emma Frost more effectively.
Got a mischief for Ken. What is he going to be able to copy, and who's going to be the ones initiating onto this battle? World Breakers aplenty for the two Hulks. The invisible boundary for Saipe is the one supportive element for Virtus.Pro to rely on, but in this case, it's not really have to be worried about. There's no break in case of emergency thus far for Virtus.Pro as they take a comfortable hold of this objective right by this first point.
The game of Psylocke Chicken looking for the 1v1. Pokey is going to be the one who's dropped a little bit low, but is able to escape. They're being chased down, though. Sparker finally able to track him with the help of Nevix on the chase. But Fincy picked off on the side as Tanuki gets the best of them with that percentage damage from the Wolverine.
Seeing the copy there. Visible boundary going to allow Virtus.Pro somewhere to just choose where this fight is and enter. One of the reasons why they might be playing Hulk is to be able to knock people in and out of these invisible boundaries that are available. Straight afterwards, BrBrPatipim coming in with a portal and also with the fate of both worlds, keeping things afloat for the time being, but still we're not seeing their names litter the elimination feed at all, and they actually got very close to taking this first point. Tanuki with the last stand, more about finding space and also finding a 2k. It's requiring Nevix to go whole cult to try to hold on for a little bit more time. Fincy swapping over towards the Strange. Is it going to be enough, actually, when it comes to a portal play? He's on the objective, and actually, there's good numbers here from Virtus.Pro to keep contesting this. Unfortunately, they are still losing numbers. It is forcing out a lot more ultimates from BrBrPatipim, and they're able to beat point A.
Fincy was the one who used their portal to come back in, but they just did not have the reinforcements fast enough. Polly didn't even get taken down, so I believe they still actually have their portal as well for the next setup. We'll have to keep an eye on that in a little bit, as we are seeing them going back to where we started outside of Tanuki, who is sticking with this Wolverine, as it has been very effective. Fincy has been a problem. They need to stop it. Nevix will now be the one to adjust. They're done with Hulk. It is time for the thing. Crowd control, grounding this Wolverine to prevent them from dashing. The inability to get CC'd out. The only thing that Wolverine has over them is, of course, the ability to crowd control.
I mean, if you get hit by the charge as well, the Earthbound will stop Loki from being able to teleport to another clone, right? Get CC'd out of it, so it's a good play to make Ken's life a little bit more miserable. Nevertheless, we do have the God of Mischief to sit back on. Alex is not going to be too far away to just go for a safe copy, and Nevix, it's not the most high mechanic of play. It's just a lot of punching square in the face, but it's effective. It's going to force out a lot. Ken, there's the God of Mischief. Fate of both worlds going to be copied because there's not really much else that you want to be grabbing otherwise. Paulie goes for the Eye of Agamotto, but it gets grabbed by the jaw from Fincy, and the Silent Seduction is about to follow. It sets up Spark with a little bit more space, I think, with the copy as well from the team up, able to catch Pokey before that Dance of the Butterflies could be used. It's going to be used on the other side instead from Sparker, and everybody's grouping up to try and survive, but you've got so many other bodies from Virtus.Pro looking to try and find something. No picks are coming through as the clobbering time comes in from Nevix, but they're buying so much time.
BrBrPatipim hovering on the edge there. They all survived that next engage. Finally, Fincy's able to get onto Tanuki. Polly has now attempted to Eye of Agamotto twice and has been interrupted twice. Once by the freeze and once by the carbon crush. And they're almost charged up again for the third time being the charm. BrBrPatipim, they were able to take down Fi earlier on in that fight, who was already returned, as they're going to try and make their way back in with 20 seconds left. Eye of Agamotto, it finally goes off! BrBrPatipim, they push on him, taking out both the front line. Now they're in the back line with the Dance of the Butterfly. Guardian,
oh my god.
No, but they've still zoned everyone away. Spark is trying to buy some extra time, but it's going to be BrBrPatipim with just under 3 meters to go, cleaning out Fi, getting Sparker, and Nevix is going to get melted as time goes on here. They're just going to get percentage damage cleaned on out. Here comes the Fate of both worlds to try and hold it in overtime, but they're so outnumbered. Fi has swapped to the Strange for the reinforcement. That could be Virtus.Pro's chance to hold this.
He's got 50% on the ultimate already because of the swap, and the Dance of the Butterflies off the Silent Seduction could be major from Sparker. It has to be respected for BrBrPatipim. We've lost Tanuki that had the last stand, and that could be it for BrBrPatipim. It might not be able to get past a little bit further. Enzo forced to use that World Breaker to just give himself a bit more HP, maybe catch a CC onto the thing, which is very hard to do at the best of times, but the invisible boundary from Side Bay keeping himself and everybody else afloat. Size He's managed to get the Ibagamota in hand, but he's exiled. Can he find a good spot up in the air? He's trying to loom over it, and the last stand from Tanuki's going to come through. 2 get stunned, but 2 have already gone down as Tanuki's last stand connects nicely. Objective back in the hands. It's stalled out, or at least attempted to, from Sparker. BrBrPatipim get things moving yet again.
Fantastic God of Mischief from Ken to buy them those crucial extra seconds. We are seeing the risk of playing the Doctor Strange in your main composition. You don't have anyone to reinforce, and we have been seeing Virtus.Pro attempting to make sure that Polly isn't the first person they're taking down in these fights. The problem with that is you're fighting in a tight enclosed area versus the Maelstrom of Madness, and this is where Polly is being able to execute the perfection. Here comes Ivagamotto landing it for a second time with Wolverine onto Phi, and they just bullied that poor man.
Clobber in time for Nevix. He goes down. He doesn't get a chance to use it. Yeah, Polly's had the chance and a little bit more space created for him. That he's finding a lot more. That Captain America not available for him. He's making a Doctor Strange sing a lot more his tune. And actually, they've taken so much space that they're actually able to get past this part of the map, which so many other teams struggle on. The fastball in hand for Tanuki. Phi needs to be careful as he's going to be the target of choice. Might have just spotted it for a pixel and able to dip, dive, and dodge. He's not enough though. Unfortunately, gets pulled right into end zone Pokey, and his objective is looming towards the end of the map.
But this is such a hard point to finish. We've almost never seen a triple cap on this map due to how close the spawn doors are to the actual end, meaning reinforcements are very easy. Fate of both worlds from Dridro to give Nevix time to respawn as they are taken down. Enzo and Monster Hulk to try and force people off the point so that they can try and creep forward for those extra 3 meters. Fincy getting frozen, forced off, and the bodies are dropping low. Dance of the butterfly onto Sparker, taking them out, and Pokey is trying to make it happen. Tanuki last stand. They're forcing them through, but a diamond form is delaying so long. Fire swapped over to Hella to try and get an extra second. But for one of the first times, we see the triple cap coming in from BrBrPatipim on Krakoa. Sorry, Arakko.
It might have been a very smart move for them to actually be picking this map, because not many teams have been able to do that. Maybe no teams have done that at all against Virtus.Pro. Oh, and it was the switch over for Tanuki that just seemed to buy them just a little bit more space. It really started to give them the edge in those fights, and we saw some comical moments where we saw Saipe and Dridro just looking at each other, trying to heal them through the damage that Pokey was able to do. But much better. Warmed up. BrBrPatipim starting to feel this one a little bit more, and they almost got stalled out on that first objective. Luckily able to keep things going. Virtus.Pro now having to match with a finish at the end of the map, which is something that we've seen from them. But doing it against BrBrPatipim, comp changes not likely. Wonder exactly what Virtus.Pro are looking to change, because Spark was on the Namor initially. It didn't take him long to move over towards the Psylocke, and especially when you have to team up with Emma Frost, would make sense to go that again if he needs to.
Namor could give them a little bit of earlier burst without having to worry about diving into the backline. But like you say, it could be a little bit riskier without having that team up, that one-shot potential. Positioning is far more important on the Psylocke than it is on the Namor, as Namor can actually be a front-forward duelist here, and they're just going to attempt to push on in with the overwhelming firepower, finding the flank and immediately into that radioactive lockdown. Fine, just trying to make sure they don't get rushed down by Polly here on that Doctor Strange.
Yeah, it's Phi just taking pot shots, forcing on the regeneration domain quite early. And you can see just how much the BrBrPatipim are split up, and they're able to catch out. Bruce Banner got knocked down from the damage, and all of this poke, I suppose, from Virtus.Pro funneled into a short corridor. Fish in a barrel. And at least Enzo's able to get back into the fight, but a good amount of space has been given up prior to this. 3 minutes for Virtus.Pro to take this first objective. BrBrPatipim, their angles of battles are starting to be shut down a little bit more. Spark at least forced out with a defensive. Surely that's going to be jumped on now from Tanuki.
Tanuki able to take Nevix off the map there, removing the Hulk using the environmental pickup. Nevix going to be forced to come all the way back from spawn. BrBrPatipim, they're taking this slow. building up those ultimates and just trying to make sure that they can slow down Virtus.Pro, who still have just under 3 minutes to go, but are taking heavy advantage of the both fly and ground attacks that they have, with this Namor actually making it very hard for Pokey to move.
These exiles have been connecting from both the Hulks. Fly very lucky to leave with his life there. Stood up on the high ground, and there's the initiation for Ken going for the copy. Got a mischief. Likely to be the Lunar Snow, just waiting to get the full duration out of it before he uses the ultimate to just make things last a little bit longer. In fact, it's going to be used on the other side, but from Dredro, and the follow-ups from Polly's Eye of Agamotto's are really starting to hit. It only connects onto one, which was Phi, but Pokey is good enough to follow instantly off what his Vanguard's creating.
Pokey pushing on forward, taking out the Monstros, removing the Squids, as they've been able to keep Virtus.Pro zoned out at least for the moment, but they burnt some defensive abilities here. No Fate of Both Worlds, no God of Mischief, whereas Cypher does have that invisible boundary. This is where Virtus.Pro can try and pull the trigger, especially as Supernova is about to come up. Enzo's going to try and delay that though, as they Monster Hulk to try and take the fight early, and it does force out the invisible boundary. This means that BrBrPatipim have taken the fight on their terms and might be able to turn this lovely lockdown to delay at least some of that Supernova to give them the couple extra seconds. Our controller player of Enzo here trying to buy some time. Tanuki takes out Dredro. This Wolverine is absolutely cracked.
He's finding so much success with this swap over. In fact, nothing's been changed since BrBrPatipim were able to choose and finish the end of their attacking side. Able to connect over onto Nevix to bring him down to Bruce Banner, and going to confirm the elimination. Just going to leave him in that state to buy more time, as a minute is all that Virtus.Pro have left to finish out the map. They do have that Horn of Proteus. If they can bait out Ken, potentially use a Fate of Both Worlds or Alex now that it's available, there might be enough with a damage boost to break through that break point of healing.
Silent Seduction is going to be key here. Fincy can land it on both strategists. It will silence them, preventing them from getting their defensive ultimates off. Phi now on the Wolverine of their own, going for a ride. Sparker dropping low, will get healed up. This is where Virtus.Pro are going to have to start pulling that trigger. But with Fincy down, they no longer have the setup. Once again, taken off the map by Tanuki.
He's finding so many picks just pushing people out. And Virtus.Pro are building up a lot more ultimates, but they're losing out on time. With Fire trying to connect over on the Wolverine himself, he's trying to get some of that success. Now it's really just BrBrPatipim holding on. Overtime is about to hit. No ultimates being used just yet. It's more a case of waiting out. And there's another one right now. Tanuki jumping off and then jumping back. The side base there ready and waiting. The Silent Seduction along with the Fate of Both Worlds is going to give Virtus.Pro a little bit more life and a little bit more space that has to be respected from BrBrPatipim. They've backed up, given up space, and they've lost Enzo.
Polly is still up, meaning there's no portal to come on in. Horn of Proteus forcing out the second Fate of Both Worlds, but with Polly now down, who is left to be healed? It's gonna be Tanuki. Dance of the Butterfly interrupted by the Carbon Crush as Virtus.Pro look to secure themselves point number one in this overtime with 5 meters to go. There's the lockdown onto Phi, but they're committing to this. It's full staggers, but BrBr, they've bought enough time for the portal. They're gonna try and take this. Phi takes one down. Alex is down. Enzo is down. Sparker is uncontested. Polly is off the point, but they're doing everything in their power to delay, but it's just not enough. BrBrPatipim cleaned up, full team wipe, and Virtus.Pro grab point number one and get an extra 2.5 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, extra 2.5 like you mentioned, but it's only going to get harder from here. You've got the second point to just push up that hill, and then you've got that awkward point in point C to get underneath the bridge. You have to finish out the map. Doesn't matter how much time you have to match what BrBrPatipim put down with their own personal best, it feels like. Now BrBrPatipim may be a bit frustrated that it didn't end there or then. Know how many fights that they're able to take, and they want to be taking as many as possible. That's why the Dance of the Butterflies is going to be used so early on in this engagement. Even if it doesn't necessarily land into a pick, it's actually gone pretty awry, actually. We're seeing some space being created from Virtus.Pro. The Thighs move over towards the Wolverine has been a good one. It's just a case of waiting for this Horn of Proteus when you've got people up on the high ground for BrBrPatipim. It's really a case of Swaka finding the perfect moment. He uses it, but there's no real picks. I think it's just Enzo that goes down to Bruce Banner form, and Finzi shuts him down.
Bit more of a zoning whale here, but it works out. Gets the lockdown, meaning they can't keep that hold topped up. Nevix able to take down Tanuki as Tanuki takes out Finzi, making it in a 1-4-1. Trying to make their way back onto the point. BrBrPatipim, even though they are already losing their Hulk. Sorry, their Wolverine, they're still going to try and take this duel as they have Aya Bakamoto. They can commit to this. Their big burst abilities aren't up, but they easily do enough damage with a fully charged Maelstrom of Madness to try and turn this. Final stand comes out from 5. They can't use it.
Great
Ollie
domain.
is taken down, getting out of it with the regen domain for the sustain.
That was a hell of a save from Ken. We're also seeing some nice lineups here. Aya Bakamoto catching on to Saipe. Follow-up, just not enough. He's able to survive through it, but Nevix can't say the same. It's traded on the other side. There's 2 Vanguards go down, 1 apiece. So it's a 5v5 fighting under this God of Mischief from Ken, who's copied over the fate of both worlds. It was used from Dreedra at the same time. And now Silent Seduction, can it get a little bit more going up this roll, up this hill? Now Finzi not having much. It's Sparker trying to find another little bit of catch. With all these clones, just cleared him out, stopping BrBrPatipim, going for an engage, but Tetra, it's looking like another overtime fight at the end of this checkpoint.
Portal will be up very soon if it's not already up. Horn of Proteus coming off cooldown, and these doorways are very thin. Here comes the Horn, taking out Alex, removing so much sustain. Vi sails on through, and they are melting BrBrPatipim. It's essentially another team-wide. Pokey's going to try and at least show face, but it's more just to stop them being staggered from the rest of the team by getting themselves picked off. That is point number 2 for Virtus.Pro, and they are heading into what might send us into an overtime, as they are cruising on towards point number 3.
That is much better.
They're going to change up their comp at all is the question. It doesn't look like it.
It's working.
Treacherous, yeah. I mean, now it might be a little bit more awkward though. But BrBrPatipim, if they've got some tricks, they want to use it now. Tanuki being able to play from the high ground, maybe dive down and catch people in this area. Where Paulie is, no player on the attacking side wants to be. It's incredibly scary, and if we see BrBrPatipim maintaining control up on the high ground, you could have a 2-pronged attack come all the way in. They have actually managed to catch Enzo that could have been out of position and maybe could have gone down, but it has to use the World Breaker. The stuns have come through over on the side of Virtus.Pro, as I think it was the last stand from Vi catching on to 3 people. Follow-up's not quite yet. Fate of both worlds is the thing that's going to keep these defenders alive for the time being, and Aya Bakamoto catching on to Sparker. It's one target. Is there going to be enough to take him out? Look at his HP. It's going down to 1, but being brought back up by Saipe and Dreedra, just funneling healing all the way into him. At the same time, though, you've lost Nevix. Vi having to use his own sustain to keep himself alive as the Wolverine, but Finzi goes down just short of having that own psionic seduction. And I think somebody's deep.
They very much have to hold on to this false physics, and we're back in, never mind. With no seconds remaining, already in overtime. Spark is going to be holding it, but if they're forced off the point, then suddenly that timer will start to tick down. Here comes the reinforcements from Nevix to hold the line, but Vi taken down by Pokey, who's approaching. That dance of the butterfly. Ken with the fate of both worlds. Finzi creeping onto the point to try and silence them, to set them up for a turnaround. No one on the portal as of yet for Virtus.Pro. They're just going to try and reinforce the manual way. And Dance of the Butterfly is cleaning them off the point. Finzi falls. The timer falls. Ryan, it's gonna be a 1-1.
BrBrPatipim pick up this map. Pokey looking pretty confident with himself, and you know, certainly with the end there, it was a little bit dicey on both sides to deal with it. But the fact that BrBrPatipim were able to finish out the attacking side on their own is hard to do. Where that payload got stuck right at the end there on Virtus.Pro's attack is a common place that those payloads don't tend to progress much further than that. So we're on as even so far. So much of the focus has been for BrBrPatipim. If you can win on domination, that's your best bet. Outside of that, it's going to be really hard. And here we are, being able to take the win over on the convoy map.
And look at Tanuki, 16 final hits, at least a couple of them environmental throughout that game. They struggled on the BP, they were just getting turned on. You mentioned how Saipe and Dreedra have been having to work overtime, but they've also been protecting each other. Black Panther tries to move in, Guardian Barrier. Guardian Barrier can't protect you if you're not behind Guardian Barrier. And that last stand from Tanuki we saw there was a great isolation. The amount of times they were picked up by the Feral Leap were great isolations. Tanuki showing showing us why the Wolverine is banned out quite consistently through multiple seasons. It's just been a rise and fall of how people counter him.
Means that Virtus.Pro have the choice of the next map. Unfortunately, the game mode is a little bit limited over towards Convergence. So Jalia is possibly one of their main options. They picked it once. They're 2-1 on it so far. Central Park, they're undefeated, but they only played it once, which was yesterday. It really is like a symbiotic service. You've lost Jalia. You've lost at one point. Virtus.Pro are not looking like completely clean on
what has been missing from these drafts. We've been focusing so much on banning out and trying to protect the EMEA or a Magneto or something like that, or in some cases a Strange, a Wolverine. They have finally been gifted Captain America. Freedom reigns.
Emma Frost banned out for Virtus.Pro. They're not the kind of team to really change stuff up for the sake of changing it. In fact, them first banning out Loki seems to be the most spicy thing that they've done in quite some time. Which makes sense. I think Patapim have shown their hand of wanting to try and protect it first, so at least they have an option in the backline. Now the ban's going to come through to make sure that neither team can get their hands over on the God of Mischief, as we now go into that stage where both teams are going to ban at the same time.
We're looking at that human torch. Has been so deadly from BrBrPatipim, so they're going to take it away, and we're going to see BrBrPatipim look to take away the Captain America. They want it one-sided. Give Polly the freedom. But this also means that BrBrPatipim get their protect before Virtus.Pro's last ban. They could, if they wanted to, secure the Psylocke, meaning that the cousins could be activated like sleeper agents to try and get into Virtus.Pro's backline.
I would have thought that there might be, because of the ban of the Torch, that they might protect Torch here, but no, instead they're looking to try and grab the Luna, Dredro, or potentially Sidebase. Both are able to play it. So it does feel like for this final ban, I mean, surely you take out the Torch. You don't want to have that just for free without Virtus.Pro needing to protect it.
Yeah.
It's that you have to copy in that sense.
Mantis, somewhere in that line, because of how much Virtus.Pro do play that comp. I completely forgot about Cloak and Dagger. Never mind. While the Human Torch has been so viable, I still would have potentially leaned that way, but that's why I'm not here. I'm not the better player. They get that damage bonus from a Cloak and Dagger. It has been dominant, and so far, game number 1, Virtus.Pro, they had Cloak and Dagger, they won. Game number 2, they didn't. There is a correlation here. Maybe not causation, but there's at least notes to look at.
Psylocke protected for Pokey, so Pokey and Polly are going to be the ones in the draft that have the most say. And a non-mirrored Luna are going to be coming in for Virtus.Pro, so they have the EMEA, they have the Luna, and they're able to actually get the Torch for free. They're going to have a Psylocke for free as well, as it was only protected from Patapim in the end. The only thing that they don't really have is the Cloak and Dagger, but because of that protection over onto Luna, Invisible Woman, you can go for the Guardians composition. Choices galore for Virtus.Pro, but a really interesting draft to see both these teams have to change stuff going from map to map.
One-sided Cloak and Dagger, but the big loss here for the side of BrBrPatipim is they did not get that Luna. They got basically everything else in terms of all those backline dive characters with that Psylocke and with that Captain America, but they don't get the Idol Aura. This is what could have been the key for a much more solid setup. Now they have to play a little bit more defensively, having to dive in and go for those dives, of course, but being more prepared to disengage because you don't get that consistent healing.
Patapim attacking first. You can already see that Enzo looking to be a little bit more annoying. I think looks like he's on the Loki, but no, it's a Doctor Strange he's going to be on. Skin throw me off a little bit. I was like, hold on a second, wait a minute. And all bodies on the point, maybe expecting Enzo with the Doctor Strange might go for the portal play, and they're not half wrong. He's on the Strange, but just decided to use his legs up until now. Now he's going for the portal play to set up the turret. Lovely stuff.
So they hear the portal, they're going to position, because they did that portal close enough that Virtus.Pro would have probably got the sound key. Here comes the portal into the collector, but no!
It's the wrong way! It's the wrong way around! No! Oh, with all of that set up to make such a comical error. Hopefully Tanuki could see the funny side, but it certainly wasn't something that Virtus.Pro were expected. They just see a portal rise, and it's just the fresh air in the sky from another part. Good God.
That is unfortunate. Immediately, Tanuki has abandoned that, made their way down to join the rest of the team. Fi now just having a lovely time up in the air. Already used the Fantastic Force. They did get that invisible woman, so they get that extra healing. Sonic Vortex from the other side to pull them out of the sky at least a little bit. But Fi now has self-healing. They have a Guardian Barrier. They even have that one-sided Lunar Snow with that Idle Aura on them. Fi is going to have so much freedom this game.
Well, Alex has managed to find himself a very early Eternal Bond. Ken has matched it. That strategist duo farming up the ultimate is just a little bit before Dreedra and Saipe, but the invisible boundary is going to be used on this corner of the point, which makes it very uncomfortable for Virtus.Pro because they need to start contesting. It's 2/3 that BrBrPatipim have been able to grab, potentially a little bit more. Silent Seduction trying to pull people out of it, like the Pied Piper pulling them pretty much into the river, and with Sparker, he's dunking on them enough to reset BrBrPatipim for the time being, but a lot of progression made.
Guardian Barrier is allowing the backliners to sustain on through that dance of the butterfly, but Sparker will still chase them back to force a reset either way. It's just a question of whether they go on legs or via the spawn room. BrBrPatipim will be forced to regroup, but while they did use a lot of their defensive ultimates, they still have Freedom Charge, which will give them that bonus health for anyone who is in the pathway of Captain America, which will be their tool to try and engage. Here comes the commitment. Final Judgment as well as Fi with the Supernova is going to try and hold this line. Sieging it from above, but needs to stay out of sight of that Punisher, who doesn't seem to have been able to spot them right now. The healing output, that bonus help for the Guardian Barrier is keeping Tanuki topped up, though as Fincy's the first to fall, but Tanuki will go down to Sparker on that flank. Enzo chasing them down, trying to get onto Pokey, and with Sparker dropping huge damage, chasing down Ken, and but the point was still taken. BrBrPatipim were able to zone well enough.
Yeah, now Sparker, it's a case of trying to exit elegantly. He's got a lot of help coming in from the Vanguards to, you know, Saipe. It's a little bit more chill. Lunar Snow, still farming up stuff, but we're missing.
The upper bracket is an advantage to get there. We're back.
Just in time. Well, been a little bit of a reset, and it's 3.5 minutes on the clock for BrBrPatipim, getting an extra 2.5 for actually capping the objective. Virtus.Pro, now that they're all back in numbers, looking to go for a fight on this early. You do have the invisible boundary and the Dance of the Butterflies that could set this up. Maybe BrBrPatipim are not going to be expecting an aggressive defense, and that's exactly what this is for Virtus.Pro.
Everyone stayed grouped up, able to get out of danger using that Dagger Storm from Alex to keep the team topped up, and the Eternal Bond to make sure that they can commit to this. Media M coming in to try and siege Remote and finds it. The prediction from Enzo. Pokey gets Nevix, and we are starting to see Virtus.Pro's defense getting absolutely cleaned up right now. Vinci, the last to fall, and the cart keeps moving with all aboard, except for Ken, who is walking back.
Back inside for BrBrPatipim, looking good today. If they can get things rolling, there has to be a contest here, and it's exactly that for Sparker. He's the one that dives on first and pretty much taken out instantly. Even when you've got the fire put on the ground from Fi, it isn't really enough to deter BrBrPatipim, not forcing them back into any of these engagements. Psychic Sphere dealt with, Freedom Charge goes well, a bit more spade. And then the final judgment to try and carve through on top. Dreedra just getting the fate of both worlds, but it's not enough to keep one of the Fantastic Four alive. The other one going to be using Invisible Boundary on the side of BrBrPatipim to just blockade this as much as possible. Finzi bringing out the Sonic Seduction, able to get one before the other Vanguard is traded. And with just under 3 minutes on the point, or 3 meters even, Virtus.Pro have managed to pull this back off the back of a really nice Supernova.
Beautiful force physics as well to make sure they can catch Pokey on the way out, and now it's a chase all the way back to spawn. Polly gets out of there, will make their way back to everyone else, and will get healed up. We did see a little bit of the combo that we saw a little bit earlier, utilizing that Freedom Charge to set up for a final judgment. The reason they're doing this for starters, bonus health going to mean that that Punisher is going to be protected throughout that ultimate. But also, what is the weakness of this ultimate other than just blowing it up? The fact it makes you move slower. while that also got buffed, making Punisher even stronger. The Freedom Charge, anyone in the path gets a movement speed buff, allowing you to try and go in for these harder games as Nemex has swapped to the Venom, and that is Virtus.Pro catching everyone on the rotation, cleaning up. They're going to force yet another stagger. The Eternal Bond was set up, allowing the dive from Polly and Alex, but now they're all alone and they're going to get cleaned up, setting up yet another stagger.
I don't have to be center
Double up
stage.
from Sparker, ends up with a double kill. So now Virtus.Pro have set themselves up with a good amount of a hold. Nevic's been able to get that Feast of the Abyss. Means that he's sat pretty comfortably. Your strategists are sat nicely as well. You've got the Invisible Boundary and just on the cusp of having a fate of both worlds. BrBrPatipim need to find an opening. Enzo's been on this Magneto for quite some time, so the Meteor M, if they can get onto the backline, as these bigger ultimates are going to be used, that could be really key to stop this from going any further, as overtime is about to pretty much hit the deadline for BrBrPatipim if they want to continue things moving, retaining control of the payload. They have to worry about where exactly these defenders are going to come from.
They're going to try and commit to this Freedom Charge and Meteor M, Invisible Boundary all at the ready. Freedom Charge and the Final Judgment will likely be the first tools to be burned. Invisible Boundary will actually be the first trigger as the Sonic Seduction comes out first, but Tanuki just obliterating Fincy to make sure that Sonic Seduction goes down. Meteor M absorbing at least a couple of the shots from Fi, who's been able to hold on to Supernova for this entire time, but has to retreat into the doorway as the Final Judgment is coming on in, melting through the Venom, but the Supernova and Sparker is enough. BrBrPatipim are starting to fall. Pokey looks for a turnaround, looks for a counter, but who is there to reinforce? The answer is no one. They're delaying as best they can, but the health pool is essentially empty as Virtus.Pro hold on 1.105 meters.
That was insanely clean from Sparkers there at the end. It's really been a highlight reel for him so far, playing up on the Psylocke. We're used to him performing, but some of the moments that he's had on Halls of Dajalia have just been splendid to watch, it looks like. Now Virtus.Pro being able to actually cap that first point has been a bit of an issue. In fact, it was the map that they lost when they lost their first ever series against Rad that really put the tie in it for them. So even though BrBrPatipim weren't able to sort of finish off past that first point, it still might be good enough if they can have an absolute out of their minds hold here.
That is going to be the play. But BrBrPatipim, they have the Punisher, which is extremely good on these heavy defensive holds. With the Invisible Woman, they have the tools. Let's see if they can pull out the win here. Virtus.Pro, on the other hand, they look like they are going to be mixing it up.
Wow.
They are now on the attack. We are seeing Dridro going to be bringing out this Penny Parker just so they can get some armor on the setup. But Sparker moving over to the Mantis is a bit more of a telegraph as to how Virtus.Pro plan on playing this.
Sparker has more final hits than the entirety of Patipim combined. That's how good he has been on this map. And you could even say that the point was lost for Virtus.Pro because of the DC from Fincy, because I think he was contesting it at the point and then, you know, DC walked off the map into a wall. Hard to know. It's certainly something that we're going to have to look back on and just double check exactly how that went and how that transpired. But nevertheless, BrBrPatipim managed to find a lot of space even before that DC happened. Portal play, it didn't quite work last time for BrBrPatipim, but on Virtus.Pro looking to do something a little bit similar, seeing if they can catch somebody by surprise. They're going to leap right on top of the high ground and instantly forcing BrBrPatipim to surrender this space.
High ground is abandoned. That is an aggressive portal. Often you'll see it placed around the corner to prevent anyone from getting picked off when they first step through the portal. Virtus.Pro, they ain't about that life. They are all about aggression on this point. They commit early, and as such, they've already managed to step onto the point and start zoning away BrBrPatipim. The team is split as Polly is once again in the backline. They turn to try and deal with them. Enzo is dropping low, but has both the strategists keeping that focus onto them to make sure that they can sustain through these fights. Pushing on in aggressively as Fincy, Maelstrom of Madness, is keeping the pressure onto those front lines, but it doesn't seem to be creating a huge amount of distance. Virtus.Pro are just winning due to the fact that they have the zoning control for now.
Managed to get a third already, and that Dance the Butterfly is in a great spot. Him and Fi Sparker has been able to find so much success, but Pokey actually finds himself the trade. Now with the invisible boundary, however, Virtus.Pro, a player down, might even be able to keep contesting, and it's really a statement that they're trying to make off the back of the Silent Seduction being used. Freedom Charge forced out from Polly to try and get a little bit more in the face, and Enzo connecting perfectly onto... Enzo, are you there? Okay, pause.
There are also... Oh, never mind, we're back in. I'll tell that story another day. As the Sparker looking for another charge of already at 78, 84% on this Dance of the Butterfly. It just charges up so quickly. They're ready to dive into the backline, but defensive abilities, Invisible Boundary and Freedom Charge. BrBrPatipim, they can time it well. They might get a turnaround, but Sparker fading, trying to bait out these ultimates here as Polly almost caught out again and will get taken out with the Maelstrom of Madness, as immediately the Dance of the Butterfly going to be dropped with only one defensive ability left. They know it's time to drop it. Force Ken to force that ability out. Dark counter with the Eye of Agamotto from Fincy to push on in even further with defensive abilities down. Polly is going to be the ones who have to hold this on the finish line with Freedom Charge, with that extra bonus health, giving them every second they can. Ken is keeping them alive as best they can, but down goes Polly, and Virtus.Pro push on in to take the lead in a 2-1.
Able to make Jallian work for them in the end, and it was just a good fight. I don't know who was necessarily the one to catch on to Polly to begin with, but just the way that Polly went down and suddenly BrBrPatipim were panicked. That's when the Strategist Ultimate started to come out. They had both available. As soon as that was done, that's where the Supernova and Fi really started to come in and shine. Now, Virtus.Pro taking back the lead, BrBrPatipim having the choice of map next. It reopens now for it to be any choice of map that BrBrPatipim won. And I would assume, Tetra, that they're going to be looking at the domination game modes as opposed to taking us to Yggdrasil or, for example, back to another Convergence map like we've just seen here. The best kind of damage, I suppose, that's available for BrBrPatipim is probably on domination. However, Krakoa not quite going their way.
Not quite going their way this time, so they will have a chance, like you say, to pick the direction. Domination for more brawls. They could go to another Convergence for a kind of counteraction, perhaps a Symbiotic Surface for something a little bit longer, but it's more of a chance to get these flanking pickups, or they can try and take us to another Convoy, where, like you said, Yggdrasil Path is an option, but there's also maps like Spider Island for a little bit of a turnaround. I just heard from the manager for Virtus.Pro that last DC was not them. Fincy was in position this time, getting some lockdowns, had the aerial psionic seduction with the portal, which is such an insane sentence to say. Nevik setting that up fantastically.
I love that Blaney was just like, that wasn't us. That wasn't stop this slander, stop this fake news. But maybe it's just a certain day, like various countries, the weather's warm. I mean, it's a heat wave. I think production was saying yesterday that, like, it's very warm in Poland, and, like, we're used to it as Brits complaining, so I think I'd give them their roses and say, like, yeah, fair enough. It's warm in a lot of places. Maybe that's impacted internet. In fact, it impacted me earlier, so I'm also on that list, I suppose, of people sort of in the black, I suppose, of being disconnected now and again. But here, there's no reason to sort of switch off and disconnect out of this series so far. This is kind of the action that we focus from BrBrPatipim over onto the EMEA. We're going to go for something a little bit different. Banning out the Luna beforehand. This is surely an EMEA save if we're sort of expecting Virtus.Pro to be playing the way that they usually do. Yeah, that's right. It's pretty much been par for the course for all of the games so far today. This ban, I mean, historically it has been low-key. You also see the Captain America banned out, so it's not available on the side of Virtus.Pro. Even the Cloak and Dagger afterwards, but it's going to be the Loki that follows.
Loki down to make sure that there is no one-sided God of Mischief. We are, once again, though, going to see the one-sided Captain America as BrBrPatipim look to take that away. Virtus.Pro, they're going to remove the Cloak and Dagger to prevent damage boost. It's snuck in for BrBrPatipim in one of the previous matches. This time, not going to be the ones to deal with it.
Strange, really. I guess more of a focus on the strategists. This was all torch stuff for 5 beforehand, but now I guess the Hell's Heaven, the torch isn't as popular, isn't as prominent, so they're changing their approach as we go a little bit deeper into this best of 5 by banning out the cloak and also protecting it. So they have access to a lot of like the strategist backline. They still have Lunar Snow available, and they've protected the Cloak and Dagger themselves. Ooh, do we actually see it? Is it worth doing? Was Virtus.Pro ever going to take Tanuki's Black Panther off the board? This is a very interesting move.
It might be more intimidation than anything else, protecting and forcing Virtus.Pro into an early adjustment to their draft, but they're not going to go that way, taking out the Mantis, trying to nerf the possibility of Virtus.Pro leading on that Starlord, or damage boosting with the Human Torch. Could have been very... Oh, obviously not the Human Torch, as it was banned away, so they're just trying to nerf away that possibility for a...
I'm not judging.
Sorry, they protected the Mantis. I am talking absolute nonsense.
No, I think it's a good move. It really does protect that triple strategist. Feels like Virtus.Pro going for a little bit of what Rad's idea was with 4 strategist bans. We saw beforehand Z10 trying to save onto Invisible Woman, but it wasn't enough healing and sustain to outmaneuver some of the bigger ults and damage. Torch isn't going to be available for Virtus.Pro this time. They've pretty much put a lot of pressure onto getting it and protecting it as early as possible. Going to be the one time that we see Fine move on to something else. But honestly, I mean, on this map, what is he likely to be playing, I guess? Wolverine, perhaps?
There are some environmental points, and there are some lovely points where Wolverine can get some big punishments on some choke points that can prevent anyone from moving in aggressively nice and early. If we have a look, we will be seeing Fi currently on that Starlord. They are bringing out Sparker. On the Mantis, though, they're not going for the Adam Warlock to empower it this time.
The battle starts in 5, 4,
Scary old stuff.
1.
It's series point for Virtus.Pro that they're playing on, but BrBrPatipim bringing them to a domination map that they've had a couple of victories over Virtus.Pro on. It's expected to be grueling, and now Polly having access to the Captain America means that there's a little bit more to play around. Ken also on the Ultron, we're seeing the aggressive portal play coming in again, and Virtus.Pro looking a little bit more prepared for it this time.
Getting the first pickup onto Enzo as they were able to get the turnaround. Finzi dropping quite low though. Sparker wrapping around from the other side. Ken on the Ultron, like you said, they're going away from... They're coming very heavily on the Flyers here as they push on in. Sparker committing, trying to get onto that Captain America. Finzi will be the one to fall though, as Tanuki is in the air with all of this healing output and is just being kept sustained so aggressively.
Iframe Safai, he's only got a couple that he's able to use and doesn't want to try and push his luck if he can help it. Tanuki having the non-mirror torch. I'm really used to seeing Virtus.Pro on the other side of it where they don't have the answer themselves. Safai reads into this nicely, having a Starlord in the first place. Expected 2 Flyers, runs into 2 Flyers. Soul Resurgence has to be used from Alex, and really it's the only big support ultimate that they have available. Rage of Ultron might be stacked on top if it was needed, but the fact that the eliminations are going BrBrPatipim's way, it can sit nicely on it, as well as the Supernova. They've got the point, they could hold on back, they've hit 35%.
Fi only just respawning here as they're going to try and make the commitment to come on in with the Psionic Seduction. Nevix, though, is just getting sieged from above. It takes a lot to make diamonds melt, but they're trying their best as is. Ayamagamoto coming out from Enzo, but Finzi gets the turnaround, dancing the butterfly, and Virtus.Pro are capitalizing the Rage of Ultron to try and get the trade out, but Ken gets sniped, but Karmic Revival brings back the whole team. Fi immediately into the backline. Basta Barrage cancels it early to make sure that they don't get caught.
Still a fight that's going away BrBrPatipim, but it could be reminders of Cocoa early where they hit 99% and then still lost the point as Virtus.Pro held on the entire time. And now that the pick Sparker's finding those multi-hits and Guy is just cleaning up house as well, so the bodies of BrBrPatipim starting to diminish. The chances of holding on all the way to 99% dropped off as Virtus.Pro able to get possession for the first time this map.
And now they can move into these defense positions. They have Terror Cape. They have Sparker on the flank. They are set up to try and take these duels. BrBrPatipim, they have some of the highest damage strategists in the game. Madness can self-boost with their own Inspire. They've got the Adam Warlock, who of course has a hit scan and Cosmic Cluster. It's massive first in the front lines. And they have the Ultron, who we already know is so rough to deal with. They're committing to hyper-aggression with all the sustain. Ayamagamoto going to be coming out from Finzi for the turnaround. The Supernova, though, is making this very hard to fight through. Cypher keeping the team topped up with the fate of both worlds, but BrBr, they still have their own Eye of Agamotto, and they're about to have Rage of Ultron to look for a second, but Tanuki caught on the side against Sparker gets another pickup. They did not have to burn that Dance of the Butterflies for it.
He's leading the line with final blows, and he might be able to add to his tally with that Dance of the Butterfly. He can just sit pretty on it for the most part. BrBrPatipim have to make a move, and Eye of Agamotto for Enzo available, but there hasn't really been that many connections so far this map that we've been seeing out of these Doctor Strange ultimates. Walking his way in, trying to find a good amount of space, but that Sonic Seduction is going to require him to keep that shield up a little bit more, and the Dance of the Butterfly is in the backline. Even with that Rage of Ultron from Ken, it's not going to be enough healing to keep people going. Eye of Agamotto forced out, and so is that Freedom Charge, but yet Virtus.Pro are looking in a pretty comfortable pole position, and it almost feels like a victory lap coming in from the sky with this Galactic Legend. There's an attempt from Tanuki to try and dodge it. He almost got out if it wasn't for the amount of bodies that Virtus.Pro have placed here. They've overtaken BrBrPatipim with the progression over on the point. Is there going to be a contest coming in from Enzo?
Sparker was able to get the double pickup onto Pokey, and it looks like, unless this portal can land, they're going to try and commit to it. Run on through 98, 99. They have to use the torch to touch it, but that will do the job. Karmic Revival drops early on the other side of the portal, so they can just dance back and forward to keep the team revived. But Sparker is just on the flank. Eye of Agamotto into the backline, trying to get through that soul rejuvenation, and they do so in convincing fashion. The bodies are falling. BrBrPatipim are running out of people. They save the Rage of Ultron. They know they're not taking that fight as Virtus.Pro take round number 1 in map number 4.
They have a Dance of the Butterflies from Sparker right at the end there that they can take straight into the Super Soldier Factory. A lot of boxed in areas that if they're not careful, BrBrPatipim might get mincemeated into a blender. Looking quickly at the numbers, it's a similar story to what we saw in the last map. Sparker this time is the one with the more final blows than all of BrBrPatipim. In fact, if you take all of BrBrPatipim's final blows and times it by 3, they would just have one more than Sparker has right now. That's how dominant he has been. Only 4 casualties happening on the side of Virtus.Pro full stop.
Tanuki is done. The Human Torch damage output, even with Mantis, is something that so many teams have been leaning onto. Tanuki is getting targeted. They can't burst through this front line. They decide to go for duels. They're still going to stick with this Adam Warlock, although I think they may have just lost the cooldown on it, as I think Pokey may have just swapped off and on again. We'll have to see. But they're committing to this. They did, in fact, lose the cooldown, but they're going to try and commit one more time. Actually, I think they swapped who's on it. Rocket coming in for Ken.
Interesting. I mean, this is what happens when you get 4 strategists spanned out. Like, you're not really left for too much when it comes to changes. Pokey gets frozen from Saipe. Absolute Zero is not going to bring him down to 0 HP. In fact, he's going to be able to survive. Unfortunately, however, you've got the Dance to Butterflies to cut through right at the end. And to be right back, Alex, maybe not wanting to return to this engagement, is actually able to get the pick onto Sparker before he's traded from Nevik. So at least he gets some revenge. And BrBrPatipim have actually taken the point first, Tetcher.
They're extremely outnumbered now. Gonna get targeted down. I was wrong, by the way. Pokey was on the Adam, as Polly is going to delay with the Freedom Charge. They know they're losing this fight. There's no way they hold this for any longer than a few moments, as the reinforcements for Virtus.Pro are coming in quite early with the Eternal Bond. But what they can do is delay this for an extremely long time to get that percentage up. The BRB is brought back to Nuki. Eye of Agamotto. I might just be eating my words here. BrBrPatipim are pushing on through. They got 5. Pokey gets Dritro. Finzy's taken out with the Galactic Legend. And I just need to eat my words. BrBrPatipim, with the longest delay into full re-engage, are able to hold the point.
You absolutely cast a curse that one.
Oh, so
like BrBrPat, they can't hold on to this too long, right?
Oh, there's no way.
It ended up being in a good position for BrBrPatipim, even if they lost the point because of how many ultimates got dedicated out. But Enzo just coming in with the Eye of Agamotto, Virtus.Pro weren't expecting. And now for BrBrPatipim, you really only set on a Soul Resurgence for the time being. A Camera Revival would be nice for Pokey. He's working his way towards it. And the Eye of Agamotto, now used on the other side, catches out the Adam Warlock just as he was about to get his ultimate online. Even through the Soul Resurgence healing, it's not enough. However, the actual a cooldown for Pokey. The Soul Perseverance has brought him back into this engagement, and also the team up for Alex means that those two picks of Virtus.Pro got at the start of this fight, and what might have been too bad. The Camera Revival able to come through, but because the Adam Warlock's taken down, there's not going to be anybody returning to this engagement for BrBrPatipim.
I'm sorry, did I miss a trick where Sparker somehow put a tracker onto Pokey, tracking them down literally every time they ultimate? The way that Karmic Revival works is there are two revive auras, the actual area of the ultimate and the aura around Adam. It is sometimes doable to just put a Karmic Revival down the middle of a fight and it can bring back everyone, but you're in the middle of a fight, that's super risky. But so what we usually see is Adams do the Karmic Revival and then run into the fight to revive everyone, but with them already taking down Pokey once with that Eye of Agamotto to remove that cocoon, and then Sparker, knowing exactly where they were, tracking them down a second time, means that the Karmic Revival is where no one can be revived by it, and there is no poke to bring anyone back as Eye of Agamotto comes on out from Enzo, Freedom Charge into the backline, but Sparker is still finding the flanks, taking down the entire backline. The BRB brings back Alex, but there is no more Adam Warlock.
He'll be right back. Resurrections and Karmic Revivals are just giving Virtus.Pro more meat to play with and to choke down on. I mean, there might not be much to say left as Tanuki has to switch over towards the Star-Lord to just keep this fight contesting. And look how close it was for BrBrPatipim to switch it over to towards their side. Pretty much right on the edge, 99%, and enough bodies for Virtus.Pro to stop that from happening. So a lot thrown at the point. Another Soul Resurgence from Alex, as well as the Legend used from Tanuki to keep this one going, but it's not enough to pin this through. Finzi must be looking at the Eye of Agamotto, licking his lips for a good fight here. You can see in the corner, he's got red flashing across his face. He's ready to be the evil do-over for BrBrPatipim. He wants to try and find a good engagement, but it could be a defeat screen that's about to show up in front of his face if he's not careful.
Look at these flicks, knowing that there's flags, waiting to see who is going to eat this bird. They can see all those strategists up on the high ground. Cloak and Levitation coming up very soon as Tanuki moves into the backline. Blaster Barrage, but not going to stay for too long as they don't want to get picked off. Enzo dropping low. Here comes that Cosmic Yard Amplifier as they go into the backline, taking out Alex. Exactly what we talked about. Finzi was scouting it the whole time to see all those strategists. It's overtime as Virtus.Pro on 99%. Fi is untouched in this fight, finding the Strange from behind. On the side, you can see Tanuki looking for a counter duel. They have their own Galactic Legend for the turnaround, but here comes Dance of the Butterfly into the backline. Eye of Agamotto comes on out, but Enzo is going to be the one to get stunned down. Finzi falls, Sparker is low. Enzo is finally taken out of Pokey. They've got Karmic Revival this time, and it's going to be BrBrPatipim with the flip on 75%.
Just in time, really needed, but they've got plenty to work with now too after that engagement. So the portal play looking to come in from Finzi. It's everybody getting up. Fi's about to have that Galactic Legend. It seems to be a case of who can draw their guns first between him and Tanuki.
Silent Seduction for the setup, trying to get onto Polly. The shields are holding everyone back. Great positioning by BrBrPatipim, burning through that ultimate aura in its entirety. Here comes the Galactic Legend from Fi. It's all that Virtus.Pro actually have right now, but they're still waiting for the charge for that fate of both worlds. Sparker very nearly getting caught in the flanks. They tried to go for Alex, but they're able, both are able to get away. Lovely sleep from Alex here as the Cosmic Card Amplifier for that damage boost and that bonus health is the commitment, which means Tanuki, if they were to go for that Galactic Legend right now, they'd have the damage boost. I could try and commit to this, but they're waiting out that fade of both worlds from Cyber to push on through as Enzo will be the first to fall. Karmic Revival inside this time, in safety, and Sparker just can't reach. Means everyone will be returning. Enzo for the counter fight. Soul Rejuvenation from Alex. Pokey may have just saved the team the game. Eye of Agamotto from above as they push on into Virtus.Pro.
It's still a case of fighting it out. Karmic Revival's done and over, and so is Pokey. Sparker now finding a pick and an opening. The BRB's going to bring back Alex, but it's whether you have enough to deal with the fight that's happening on the point. Tanuki, Galactic Legend, trying to keep this Legend alive, and it's not really going to be enough as Virtus.Pro do lose out on Sparker. That's a big pick in the end from Enzo, and a portal play, I think, coming in from Finzi to just find a little bit more, perhaps. You heard it in the background. It's just a case of seeing what's going on in all of the chaos as the Eye of Agamotto catches onto Pokey again. The Soul Bond, I think, just keeping him alive, as well as the Amplifier. It was down down to extra health from the shields that were able to keep him going. And the fate of both worlds now for Saipe, gonna keep things trucking along. They still, Virtus.Pro, have to take this point. If anybody gets off of it, it's gonna be BrBrPatipim taking us to a third point over on Hell's Heaven.
Enzo is down. If they have Portal back up, as this fight's been going on for quite a while, they might be able to take this. The overtime is trickling down, but Virtus.Pro have cleaned off BrBrPatipim. It's all about reinforcements and delays now. Tanuki trying to get away. Freedom charge to hold. Portal comes back in. BrBrPatipim. It's time for round 3 of the same fight. Aya Nagamoto is blocked out by the Mind's Aegis. Galactic Legend from the sky. Tanuki's going to try and take down Fire and will get the Nevix. Finzi fall, and Saipe is down. No one is up. BrBrPatipim are gonna even up map number 4, and we are heading in. Virtus.Pro still on the brink of victory, but BrBrPatipim are still in this fight.
Able to finally take a point in these domination modes. And it took everything that they had that was available to them. And Enzo, the absolute hero with the portal, literally end game moment, it felt like. Just seeing it turn up and the bodies come through. You look at what was used, Soul Resurgence, the Freedom Charge for Paulie, Tanuki with that Galactic Legend was the one that really took, checked the X in that box for the Super Soldier Factory. But now that we go over towards the Eldritch Monument, I think Virtus.Pro might have the edge here with the ultimates that are either available or about to be.
We'll find out which team has been making their unholy sacraments to the Eldritch God that exists in this temple. As BrBrPatipim, they almost have that Karmic Revival already, which might give them an early pickup. And using it early would be potential. Oh, never mind. Using that Karmic Revival early could give them a great reinforce early to get the point. And of course, the earlier you use it, the more time you have to charge for a second one. I'll actually tell a quick story here while we are waiting out.
I really want to go to Iceland. There's been a couple of events in Reykjavik that I've missed out on, and I've only heard wonderful things. Oh, we're back, finally. I don't need to talk about Reykjavik any longer. But Virtus.Pro, they're taking the momentum out of things just a little bit, perhaps. And I think a portal play was actually used from BrBrPatipim to try and set up in an aggressive position off the rip.
Finzi actually used their portal and cancelled it, so not going to go for the full commitment here, just deciding to go in via the power of legs. Dridro already taken out by the fearless leap into the Super Soldier Slam coming in from that Captain America. Tanuki will go down on the other side though, but BRB brings them back, and they have that Cocoon, and they will at some point have Karmic Revival. It's going to be real hard to keep Tanuki down.
Movable object, perhaps. But whether Virtus.Pro an unstoppable force is a case of attrition, forcing out these ultimates and being able to do it spaced out nicely enough that you could stop BrBrPatipim from being able to resurface. Because Pokey now sitting a little bit further back, able to just pop away. Yeah, you lose Enzo, that's going to force the ultimate out pretty early on. And the resurrects are plenty. Nobody has really disengaged from this fight for BrBrPatipim, but they've got off the point long enough for Virtus.Pro to actually take it. So this fight could get really messy. Dridro's found a way back into this one, and the Silent Seduction is just going to cap it off. Everything that BrBrPatipim had to keep themselves alive in that fight can't last the unstoppable force that is Virtus.Pro.
Karmic Revival turning into a KO1, KO1 free as Virtus.Pro are able to clean out BrBrPatipim, who are setting up for a portal re-engage, not wanting to give a single second worth of time, and they of course go for the wraparound to attack from the other side. Any defensive positioning that has been set up is going to be disjointed as Tanuki takes to the sky with the Galactic Legend, but the Eternal Bond is making it very hard to deal, and they even find the BRB on the flank.
Galactic Legend throughout all of this mess that was left on the point from the Cloak and Dagger. He's now found a Tanuki that's out of position, a little bit cheeky, a bit of a Mongoose play there, just in the backline, trying to see if he can fit in. The spy play perhaps, but the Barrage is trying to cut out for a little bit more. As after the Galactic Legend, the Hunt Dogs are trying to find that little bit extra, that combination for Sparker, just allowing him to put out a little bit more damage, twice as much onto Tanuki. So even though he was brought back with a team up from Adam Warlock, he's taken out again by the other duelist.
Dance of the Butterfly once again in the backline. Sparker continuing their what seems like a very personal vendetta versus Pokey. Able to get yet another pickup and grabs Alex on the way through. Neither of them are going to use that cocoon, instead just choosing to head back to base so that they can regroup with their team that way. Virtus.Pro on 87%. BrBrPatipim are running out of time. Remember, if they cannot claim this map, it is over and Virtus.Pro will take the win. Already we're seeing Enzo stepping onto the point, but it's getting eaten out here. Here comes that Cosmic Yard Amplifier for the extra bonus health, but a fully charged Fincy is melting through it. That's going to remove a huge amount of sustainance. The Eternal Bond comes out for that extra healing, and the damage goop on the floor. Terror Cave onto Tanuki, forces a disengage as the Soul Rejuvenation comes on out.
Arakko only connecting onto Dreedro, but the follow-up is there again. This time Ken is able to take him out, so it really is going to force that Fate of Both Worlds out from Saipe to just keep Virtus.Pro going. Galactic Legend is going to just pip the post there as far as very close to having his own, but not quite just yet. He wants to get on the point, and Tanuki is absolutely cleaned up as Virtus.Pro hit 99%. BrBrPatipim are going to streak things up now. One more fight, a good one for Virtus.Pro, and they're able to take this one. But BrBrPatipim digging their heels and have a karmic revival and a be right back, as well as the multitude of different combinations from that team up with Adam Warlock. They shall not be moved.
Let's look at what Virtus.Pro have. What are they bringing to the party for this re-engage? Karmic Revival available for BrBrPatipim. For Virtus.Pro, they have that Galactic Legend. They almost have that Dance of the Butterfly, but that's about it. Aggression is what they're going to have to use here. If Pokey can stay safe, they might be able to turn it around. Alex going to be the first to fall. Brought back at the BRB. Trying to get onto Rocket to take them out, but they're able to dash away. Blast a Barrage to take down the front line who was dropped low because the strategists are getting zoned away completely here. Pokey is just trying to remain hidden, but it's personal. It's personal. Pokey's down again, but they have the cocoon.
I said he got Canute, and it's just by practice we're seeing him play that much Adam Warlock, but he's been brought back. It's Pokey instead with the counter revival in hand, able to get a pick onto Nevix, and he's already lost Polly. Is he going to pull the trigger on the ultimate now to bring back your tank? No, instead they're going to hold on for as long as possible. The Arakko connecting onto Saipe, and yet again for BrBrPatipim, the follow-up after these Enzo ults has been stellar. Soul Resurgence to really stick the knife in, build up the pressure. Can Finzy get the copy over? He can. He's able to take out Alex all on his lonesome as Tanuki up in the sky alongside Polly. Might have found a way to make this a map 5 for BrBrPatipim. Virtus.Pro all being broken down piece by piece, and the cocoon, the Soul Perseverance, is going to bring life back into BrBrPatipim. We're going to a map 5.
They take the win. Then they didn't even need the Karmic Revival at the end. They just held onto it for the last possible moment. It came down instead to the damage from that Arakko to take down the Lunar Snow early. This allowed them to just sustain out that Eternal Bond from the Cloak and Dagger of Dreedro, and then they were able to work their way through front to back of everyone on the side of Virtus.Pro. We are at 2-2. One map to go, as both these teams sit on the edge of that upper bracket final, or a fated matchup with Team Peps.
Oh, I mean, that was a hell of a fight back. It's got to be frustrating though when you have all of these timeouts on the side of Virtus.Pro just almost cutting into your own momentum, right? Like, it's not anybody's fault. These things happen all the time. But looking at Sparker, 30 final hits. Yet again, it's going to be close between him and the entirety of the side of BrBrPatipim, but Tanuki, when he started to show up himself over on the Star-Lord, and we saw this composition for BrBrPatipim really start to shine a light, it was looking exceptionally strong from them. Just some good engagements, able to stall things out, and VP going into that final map, which is going to be their choice. It's not going to be domination, so they don't need to worry about that. Maybe looking at the quadruple strategy span they came up with. One of the few times, Tetcher, that we've seen that not work.
Yeah, it was started working for bits of it, where Sparker was just in the backline causing chaos. Like we said earlier, kind of laser guided onto Pokey, but Pokey is the one who adjusted here, not in terms of how they played or like the character. They just changed where they stood. They stood in lower grounds. Instead of the obvious revive points, they took safer positions behind cover. In terms of like in that central first map, they were standing in that entrance room to make sure that they had the cover from Sparker, who was already in the middle of the fight. In this map, they stood on the low ground in that little doorway, which forced again Sparker to use ultimates on just them to try and prevent them from getting value. It was a lovely little adjustment with very little actual effort having to be put in to make the change that was enough to help them win a couple of those fights.
BrBrPatipim giving Virtus.Pro a taste of their own medicine by being down 99% to 0 on a point and being able to pull out the whole switcheroo. Tanuki, just a hero plays, honestly, some really good moments, but an individual performance from everybody. Polly being able to get that Captain America seemed to make a vast difference, it felt like. But I'm going to give people watching a chance, right? You've got your box here that might be that prediction that Virtus.Pro were going to win this. Are you going to stick with it or are you going to switch with it? You have a little bit of time to deliberate as we're going to have a break very shortly, but ban phase yet again.
How appropriate that we are heading into the Americas after this with our wonderful American colleagues, and we have decided to head to the concrete jungle where dreams are made of. And for these teams, there's nothing you can't do. They've both proven that they can surpass the odds, that they can surpass expectations, which are already extremely high due to how powerful these teams are. And yeah, the Luna early protection, and I think it might be time to unleash Pokey.
I guess it was because of that quadruple strategist ban that was coming through, because it was Loki, Luna, the Virtus.Pro banned out first in this instance in the last map. Now they're going to go for the EMEA naturally, and yeah, protective EMEA, that's pretty much been the go-to in all 5 of the maps that we've seen today. Now it was a case of banning out Loki, Cap'n, and Torch for BrBrPatipim. The first point does make a lot of sense considering the Virtus.Pro went for that first ban of Loki beforehand.
There is that Loki, once again, like you say, taking it out. So far, very predictable. Captain America, if you see that Lunar Snow, you're expecting the Captain America and the Psylocke combo. So they're going to take away the Captain America part of it, as that's something that can really empower Pokey when they dive into that backline, as it's a great setup for them Pokey to get the finishing blows. And BrBrPatipim, they're just sticking with their fairly consistent style, just not wanting VP to have what BrBrPatipim believes to be one of the most powerful characters in the game. But this leaves Virtus.Pro open for one of the first times to get their hands on the Human Torch.
Back to the Torch Protect, which is what was going well for Virtus.Pro in the other maps. Last time it was the EMEA and the Cloak, and really you just want to allow Fire that space in the sky to do quite a lot of that damage. So now we're getting into that final ban on the side of BrBrPatipim. Last time it was the Torch they took out, but that's not longer going to be available. Cloak and Dagger, I mean, that was the one that was protected last time, so it really is a case of one or the other for them. They protected the Mantis last time to give themselves that triple res comp, but instead, knowing that having Torch on one side and not the other on Midtown is too much of a risk. Both going to be available on both sides.
Giving themselves the option, they've of course got that Lunar Snow as well, so they can go for that idle aura onto the Human Torch in the air or onto Pokey on the ground if that's the strat they choose to go for. If not, then Punisher is still available. They have Mantis for damage boost. Also, there is currently the option for the one-sided Cloak, where BrBrPatipim could pick it up for a bit of a damage boost on their own side, and they're gonna do so with Ken going for that hover. So now they have the potential vulnerability from the Terra Cape to set up for Tanuki or Pokey.
Yeah, Patipim having access to Luna and Cloak is a lot of healing output. But at least on the side of Virtus.Pro, you're able to maintain the Torch. You've got the EMEA Frost as well, so that is enabling you to set up Sparker on the Psylocke yet again. Able to keep and hold on to Luna on your side. You're only just missing out on the Cloak, but you're going to just probably have Saipei or Dredra on Invisible Woman instead for that team up with Torch. So not the worst thing in the world. I think it does just put a lot more pressure onto Patipim's backline. Notably, I guess it would be Ken in this instance to hit those Terra Capes, because you have to get through a good amount of healing if they have Lunar Snow and Invisible Woman available.
We'll also have to see if we go for any of these big holds, these early setups outside the main doorway that we saw from some of the other teams earlier in the group stage. Of course, that strategy is a little bit weaker now with the multiple Vanguards, as the nerf to Penny Parker has made these setups a little bit weaker with the consistent trap setups of those biotic spider nests.
And Enzo not having much of an option when it comes to the front line. Captain America not available, EMEA Frost not available, nor Magneto. So instead of the strategist being hit by a lot of those bans, Virtus.Pro decided to look at the front line as opposed to the back line. But Enzo has been happy to play a little bit of Hulk, and Wolverine's available, so if they want to go for some plays to counter Fi up in the air, maybe that fastball special could be very useful in these places at this time. Pokey trying to sort of have a bit more follow-up, isn't combined with the cousin on these dives. Instead, it has to go over to the French controller player to see if they can get a connection here to find some space on this attack.
Looking for an opening, both Tanuki and Phi sieging it from above. Duelists are mirrored. One looking for quick burst blow up, the other looking for just whittling people down with those flame forms. In comes the dive once again from Enzo on that Hulk and getting out. This is exactly how we used to see Hulk play. Dive in, indestructible guard, do what you can, and then leave. Set up later. Here comes the fate of the Eternal Bond as the first setup, forcing that invisible boundary out of Cypher as Nevix was the first to fall. Enzo playing incredibly aggressive into the backline, and Tanuki pushing into the invisible boundary, going for the hyper commitment. They burned one ultimate for that as BrBrPro take a convincing fight.
That was unrelenting. Is there going to be a contest here, though? It's eking onto the edge. It's not going to be there at all for Virtus.Pro. So not only is that the first point, they can often have the payload stuck there for a good amount of time taken. 5 minutes on the clock to go further. And really, Virtus.Pro at this point, they've got ultimates. They just don't want to keep having to be reset. And Nevix caught in no man's land, it looks like.
Hulk going into the monster Hulk from the start, and the butterfly comes into the backline. BrBrPro with their own fate of both worlds, matched by Alex for the defensive play. Pokey has held onto their dance of the butterfly just in time to try and time it with the end of BrBrPro's fate of both worlds, but they time it a little bit slower, but it's still going to be enough to take out the Luna. And Cypher getting locked down with the radioactive lockdown, taken out, and this is BrBrPatipim, relentless, heading towards the beginning of the ramp as they head into the Fisk building basement.
And that's what Fate Both Worlds and its seduction used. Dance the Butterflies finding nothing. Alex manages to beat them all with their own Luna ultimate. Auto play coming through to just block this entranceway from Virtus.Pro being able to contest, but there's still a window. It's just that everybody else has to funnel through it. A little bit of healing to keep people topped up, but the Supernova is going to be available on this defensive side, trying to catch the Human Torch that's kind of put himself between a rock and a hot place as Phi has managed to cook him down with the Supernova. BrBrPatipim maybe overstretching and overextending a little bit to try and cap that second point quickly. End up pulling themselves too thin, and Virtus.Pro able to maintain control for the first time.
Enzo in banner form is still continuing to harass. They're kind of isolated, so they're not even going to stagger them. They're just
jumped off the map.
They jump off the edge. There we go. Not deciding to go in with that gamma radiation gun to try and get some snipes on the side. They just go to transform back into the Hulk and rejoin their team in this main entranceway as they try to make their way back to the subway. Dance of the Butterfly, Phi and Sparker cleaning on up. Without that Hulk there, BrBrPatipim had one less player. They get staggered and they get burst down.
And that was through the Eternal Bond. I think BrBrPatipim would have taken that trade, otherwise just been like, okay, yeah, we're 90% away from having our Fate of Both Worlds, just let them reset us. We'll just go again in a second, buy them a bit more time. But now this is really hard. I mean, this is a perfect setup, though. Nice art on the ground. Phi's drawn up. Just connecting the dots a little bit more. And Finzi actually seeing exactly where BrBrPatipim, everybody's coming from this direction. Needs to be a little bit careful, but he's eyeing up the Eye of Agamotto. There's not really many barriers outside of Poly that's going to be able to block that ultimate when it comes through. And Enzo, even if this looks like a bit of a ragtag thing and he goes down to banner form, that's a great play to make sure that Virtus.Pro have to give up some of that space. And BrBrPatipim are allowed a bit more freedom to fight on this objective.
But now they're down a member. Once again, the Hulk forced out of sync with the rest of BrBrPatipim. Going to be transforming once again. Enzo has to make their way back in. But like you say, Virtus.Pro, they are being forced back into this doorway in the underground, protecting that entrance to the basement. As Phi creating a pyro prison up on the high ground to make sure that anyone who has to come in is going to have to take a little bit of damage. Nice pull onto Poly, as once again, Enzo's in the back line.
Supernova actually coming out of Phi this time. Tanuki had it first, but he's just holding on to it. It's going to be the fate of both worlds to allow a bit of pushing power, but Enzo just seems to be going down so quickly in these fights. He's got enough sustain to keep himself going, but this kind of place to be taking a battle, it's a bit too hot, so he has to get out of the kitchen.
Sparker chasing them down, looking to get onto Pokey, but can't seem to get that finishing blow. Retreat out of BrBrPatipim. Virtus.Pro They are holding this very convincingly. After so much bonus time for BrBrPatipim, they are starting to tick down to that last minute once again. They've made it well over halfway. Still a solid setup here, but they can't afford to just give it up here. It needs one more commitment, and they have almost every ult to do so, whereas Fi, 35% on their Supernova. Dridro, 15% on that Fate of Both Worlds, compared to Alex, the only person on BrBr without their ultimate. Silence enough to try and shut this down as the Supernova and the Eternal Bond come on in for the commitment onto the backline, but it is great positioning by Virtus.Pro to stay out of danger as the Eye of Agamotto into the invisible boundary to set them up, but everyone is tanking through. The invisible boundary is about to expire, and BrBrPatipim are about to have the ultimate advantage. Counter Eye of Agamotto to get onto the backline, but it's blocked out with the barrier, and Sparker, they've timed it perfectly. They're cleaning up the backline. It's the reset here, Ryan.
Oh, that was a play for BrBrPatipim that could have gone so well. They had the Exile set up, and then the Eye of Agamotto once they connected onto Finzi, but he was just able to get up in time. And Sparker, the hero in the backline with 10 seconds left. Enzo having to drop himself into the underground to try and reset this quickly. Tanuki switching over towards the Spider-Man to try to go for a super swing in to save the day. Unfortunately, no overtime fight is going to be allowed for BrBrPatipim and Virtus.Pro. They have the line drawn in the side that they need to be in 4 minutes plus a bit extra time if they hit that first checkpoint.
A solid push by BrBrPatipim, but held at this low ground location in the underground. BrBrPatipim, they just weren't able to break that siege. Enzo tried to distract, tried to dive the backline, but Virtus.Pro were reacting too fast every single time, and there were too many times where Enzo was in the spawn room while their teammates were waiting for them. As such, Virtus.Pro, they're beginning to adjust. Tanuki moving over to the, sticking on the Human Torch. It's Enzo who's moving over to the Thing as the potential defensive option for BrBrPatipim to try and put a stop to the Psylocke.
Again, as a reminder, start to look at the bans at the top, and you can see that the triple Vanguards was taken out on the side of BrBrPatipim, so there's not really much to rely on. You lose out the Magneto, the Emma Frost, the Captain as well, that Polly would want to be playing. Feels like it does force people onto uncomfortable roles, to say the very least, and whilst these Vanguards are flexible, there's no combination that is as good right now as it feels like Emma Frost plus Magneto, or Magneto plus X. It's just so hard, and now Virtus.Pro traveling from that Baxter building, pushing their way up with Herbie. If they could set a very strong time on this first point like BrBrPatipim were able to, it could be set.
Rollout attempt with that Frost Arrow from Fi, immediately swapping off as there's no reason to stay on it at this stage when you've got that Human Torch available for more consistent damage. But they were going to try and go for a lockdown early to see if they could gain a quick advantage. Mine's Aegis will force Ben, the Thing, down to that low ground as Nemix is gaining so much positioning here, down to the low ground, catching Strange in the Carbon Crush, and that will be a huge pickup for Virtus.Pro as that card starts to move forward.
Bullying of the Vanguards happened in the draft, and it's happening in the server too as well. Now, if I seen if he can win this head-to-head up against a Human Torch that's already dove to the low ground to try to escape some of the damage, not able to dash to a safer position. So already BrBrPatipim have lost a lot of members. Polly required to go for the portal play pretty early on, but you can see just how far away he is from the rest of his team, and there's a portal that was placed there in between from Finzi that's going to make this a really annoying fight. You've just got all of these holes around. It's like the Spider-Verse with trying to get around the dots that are placed in this engagement. So Virtus.Pro, they're making a lot of chaos here, and it's forcing out a lot from BrBrPatipim. You see the Eternal Bond having to be used, and the Cloak and Dagger needed to be very careful with where they position themselves now. The invisible boundary for Cypher is going to set up a nice engagement, and Fi's found himself a nice pick to set this up great for this first point.
Dance of the Butterfly going to try and get onto those backline. Sparker getting absorbed thanks to that Fate of Both Worlds from Alex, as both teams are just burning big abilities but can't seem to find an opening. But now with the Strategist ultimates about to expire from BrBrPatipim, Enzo is deleted here. Eye of Agamotto comes on out, and Fi is uncontested. They have that Fate of Both Worlds from Dridro. They chase back the members of BrBrPatipim, and point one is picked up for Virtus.Pro. Alex and Tanuki fall in the retreat. Ken is staggered, and they are looking for more, almost able to catch up to Pokey, but they will be able to escape and try to set up this defense. And this is looking kind of familiar, Ryan. Virtus.Pro trying to just rush ahead.
BrBrPatipim fans, you don't need to worry. BrBrPatipim were able to get that first point a lot faster, and you saw where exactly it got stuck. But it does feel that BrBrPatipim, if they're going to go for a fight here, they need to win it. They almost lose out on the hook, and the Dance of the Butterfly is going to be forced out and finds nothing. Poke using it more to just posture a bit more space, and Nevix has found the opening, and the Dance of the Butterfly catches and cuts through too. BrBrPatipim could be done and out at this rate, as Virtus.Pro didn't lose anybody in that engagement. Paulie using the portal before. I don't know if he's going to have it available now.
They just try to rush back in on feet. They don't even stagger the Hulk here because they know that they need that cart to be moving, and every second that Bruce Banner is alive is another second that that cart isn't moving as they rush on in. Venom once again. Enzo with the attempt at the saving grace with that symbiotic resilience to try and buy the extra time. The invisible boundary is all that's up for Virtus.Pro right now, but they're approaching that psionic seduction and the fate of both worlds. Enzo is the first to fall. Polly is now the only vanguard on the point. Eternal bond for the opening, invisible boundary for the counter. But while this is happening, we're building up towards Iron Motion. We're building up towards Supernova for the setup. Psionic seduction to prevent any follow-up, prevent sustain. Alex swapped over to the Adam Warlock and is bringing the team back as they try to sustain through the point. But Fi is untouched in the air. The Supernova is melting through the team, and Fi is pushing on the down to the butterfly to try and take him down, but they're too fast.
Now Fi having to try and reset, casually escaping the encounter, whistling as he goes along. And there's still a fight is going on. BrBrPatipim fighting for every tooth and nail if they can grab a little bit more room to work with. But it's 3 meters that the objective is stuck at now. And Virtus.Pro are not clean engaging from this. They're trying to consistently fight. And it's going to force Enzo out with a Feast of the Abyss, but he gets stunned in the process. Requires